Choosing a business phone system looks simple. You need a number, customers need a way to reach you, and as long as the phone rings, you're fine. Now that assumption is where a lot of businesses get into trouble. The wrong setup can lead to missed calls, customers getting sent to voicemail when someone, could have helped them, employees struggling to transfer calls, and eventually having to move the entire business to another system once you've outgrown what you started with. Now, on the other hand, you also don't want to spend money every single month on an elaborate phone system for your business when all you really need is a professional number and basic calling. So in this video, I'm going to compare Google Voice with what I consider a dedicated business phone system. We'll look at everyday calling, managing employees, customer experience, integrations, scalability, and finally pricing. Now, before we begin, I do want to thank Nextiva for sponsoring this video. They're the dedicated business phone system that I'll use as an example throughout the video here, but know that this is still an honest comparison. And when Google Voice is better, I'll say that directly. Now that said, there's one specific point where Google Voice can go from being a smart way to save money to something that starts holding your business back. But more on that here in a minute. First, let's discuss the difference between Google Voice and business phone systems. The biggest difference isn't whether either option can make a phone call, right? Obviously, they both can. Now the difference is what the system is designed to do around that call. Google Voice gives you a business phone number that you can use from your phone, computer, or other supported devices. You can keep your personal number private, receive voicemail transcriptions, forward calls, send messages, and take your business number with you instead of being tied to a traditional office phone. And Google's business plans are more capable than some people realize. But depending on the plan, you can also get things like call transfers, recording, auto attendance, ring groups, and call queuing. So Google Voice is a real phone system, not just a second number. But a dedicated business phone system is designed around the idea that multiple employees may need to answer calls, route customers to different departments, track what's happening with those calls, and connect phone conversations with the rest of the business. Now that distinction might not matter when you're getting 5 calls a day. But once the phone becomes an important part of how customers interact with you and your business, those extra layers start becoming much more important. So let's start with the situation where Google Voice makes the strongest argument for itself. Now, if you're running the business mostly by yourself, Google Voice can cover a lot of what you actually need. You can have one professional number instead of, putting your personal cell phone everywhere online. Calls can come through your smartphone or your computer. Voicemail can be transcribed so you don't have to listen to every single message. And you can separate at least some of your business communication from your personal life. Now, for a consultant, contractor, photographer, freelancer, or other solo business, that can be plenty. And this is important because having more features isn't automatically better. If you only receive a few calls every day, you probably don't need customers navigating through 5 different menu options before they can talk to you. But picture a slightly different business, right? Maybe you have someone that's answering the front desk, someone else handling the sales, and another person who deals with existing customers. Now, when somebody calls, you don't just need the phone to ring. You need to decide where that call should go. You may want calls handled differently during business hours and after hours. You may want a sales call going to several employees until somebody answers. And if everybody's already busy, you might want the customer to wait in a queue rather than, immediately getting dumped into voicemail. Google Voice can handle some of this on its higher business tiers, which makes it more flexible than a lot of people assume. But the more complicated your call flow becomes, the more you start entering territory that dedicated business phone platforms were specifically designed for. And adding employees is usually where that difference becomes much easier to see. So a phone setup that works perfectly for one person can become really frustrating surprisingly quickly once a team gets involved. Imagine that you own a home services company. When you first started, every customer called you directly. You answered when you could, called people back when you couldn't, and Google Voice worked perfectly fine. Then the business grows. Now you have, someone scheduling appointments, another employee answering billing questions, and a few technicians who occasionally need calls transferred to them. Suddenly, the problem is managing the calls, not making them. And this is where I'd start looking more seriously at a platform like Nextiva. Nextiva is an example of a dedicated business phone system that's really designed around these types of team workflows. You can set up call groups, queues, auto attendance, routing rules, extensions, and different ways of transferring customers between employees. And if you want to check out Nextiva for yourself, there's a link right up here where you can get a demo of the platform yourself. And no need to click that right now, as we still have a lot to cover here, but that link will be up there for the rest of the video if you want to check it out at any time. And that said, the thing to understand is that there are a few advantages of a dedicated business phone system that you really do need to know. So for example, maybe every new sales call rings 3 employees at the same time, but support calls go into a queue and are answered in order. Or maybe your receptionist answers first and then uses a warm transfer to speak with another employee before sending the customer over. Now, those little details can make a big difference in how smoothly the business operates. Google Voice Standard still gives growing businesses useful tools like ring groups, auto attendance, and call queues, so hiring a few employees doesn't automatically mean that you need to switch. The question is really how complicated the communication between those employees is becoming. Because, once your phone system starts affecting how customers experience the business, the stakes, they get a little bit higher. All right, so here's something that customers probably aren't going to tell you. They're not going to call and say, your phone system seems outdated. They're just going to get frustrated. Maybe they called twice and nobody answered. Maybe they reached the wrong employee and had to explain everything again. Or maybe they left a voicemail and decided to call your competitor while they waited. That's why features like auto attendance, call queues, routing, and shared call handling matter more than they initially sound. An auto attendant can let someone choose sales, support, billing, or another department without needing a receptionist to manually direct every call. A queue can keep customers connected when employees are already talking to other people. And routing rules can make sure that calls go somewhere useful instead of reaching a dead end. Now, Google Voice can provide some of these tools, especially on its standard plan, and for a relatively simple operation, that may be enough. But systems like Nextiva go further into managing and analyzing the entire calling experience. Now, for example, you may be able to see how many calls your business received, how many were missed, how long customers waited, how quickly employees answered, and how much time your team actually spent talking to customers. Now, that's especially valuable for businesses where calls equal money. Think about a law office, dental practice, HVAC company, or sales team. If 20 potential customers called last week and 7 weren't answered, that's 1/3 of your leads gone. And it's the kind of thing that you'd want to fix immediately. And as your business grows, the value of the phone system usually starts depending on more than the calls themselves. So one of the easiest mistakes to make is choosing a phone system based entirely on what the business looks like today. Maybe right now it's just you and 1 employee. But what happens if you have 8 employees 2 years from now? What if you open another location? What if your sales team starts using a CRM and you want phone calls connected to customer records? This is where Google Voice and a dedicated business phone platform start moving in different directions. Now, Google Voice has a major advantage if your business already runs heavily on Google Workspace. It fits naturally alongside tools like Google Calendar and Google Meet, and employees don't have to learn an entirely separate ecosystem just to answer a phone. Now, that simplicity is valuable, but a platform like Nextiva is built with a much broader business communication environment in mind. For example, Nextiva supports integrations with CRM and business software such as Salesforce and HubSpot. And depending on your setup, that can help employees connect phone conversations with customer information instead of treating every call like an isolated interaction. Imagine that a customer calls your sales team for a 3rd time. It's much more useful if the employee can quickly see who they're talking to and understand the history of that relationship than if, all they see is a phone number. You might not need any of that today, but if you already know that you're planning to build a larger team, I'd rather choose a system that gives me room to grow than save a little bit of money and migrate everything later. Which brings us to the argument that Google Voice usually wins immediately, which is price. Now, Google Voice is inexpensive compared with many full business phone platforms. Its business plans currently start at around $10 per user per month and move up depending on the features that you need. Now, if you're using the business version with multiple users, you also need to consider the Google Workspace subscription associated with your setup. And if your requirements are basic, well, that can be excellent value. If you're a one-person consulting business and you mostly need a professional number, voicemail, texting, and occasional calls, there's very little reason to pay extra every single month for sophisticated call queues and analytics that you're never going to use. A dedicated platform like Nextiva can cost more depending on the plan, number of users, billing term, and additional features that you choose. But this is where I think looking at price per user can be misleading. So let's say that you're paying a little bit more each month for 5 employees. If the better routing, queues, or reporting helps your team capture even one additional customer who would have otherwise hung up or reached voicemail, the difference in software costs could become almost irrelevant. So, look at phone software the way that you'd look at any other operational tool. The question isn't which one costs less. It's what it costs when the system can't do what you need. Now, that said, in this next section, let's go ahead and break down, what you should actually choose based on your situation. If you're a freelancer, consultant, solopreneur, or very small business with straightforward calling needs, Google Voice is a strong option. It's affordable, relatively simple, works nicely with Google Workspace, and its business plans have enough features that some small teams could realistically use it for years. I wouldn't upgrade just because a dedicated business phone system has a longer feature list. But if customers calling your business is a meaningful part of how you generate leads, schedule appointments, close sales, or provide support, I'd start leaning towards a dedicated system. And that's where something like Nextiva makes more sense to me. You get a platform that's built more specifically around team communication, call routing, queues, analytics, integrations, and more complicated workflows as the company grows. So if you've reached the point where Google Voice feels a little bit too limited for your business, I definitely recommend taking a look at Nextiva again with the link right up here. Now, that said, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions at all about Google Voice or Nextiva, please comment below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching and I will see you in the next video.